Good morning, everyone. Time for our arts and culture segment. And along Route 6A in beautiful Barnstable Village, there's a rather unique looking building with an interesting history. And Melissa, so good to see you here in studio.
Yes, nice to see you too, Sarah. And yes, a unique history. It was the former U.S. Customs House, which is now home to the Coast Guard Heritage Museum.
Wonderful.
Extra special visit for me because I don't know if I ever even told you this, Sarah. I was a Coast Guard reservist for 8 years. Yes, many moons ago. So it was kind of neat to go and see all of that. The museum is wonderful. It's led by volunteers. There on the ground is the former jail. There's a working blacksmith on the property as well. So it's this nice little gem right in Barnstable Village. And not only do they have special collections and their year-round collections, but they're always adding to it because those that have served like to share some of their memorabilia with the museum.
They do, and there are a lot of coasties on Cape Cod, and my father-in-law is a former Coast Guard. My uncle was in the Coast Guard, and there's a lot of pride that's associated with that, and I know people love to reminisce and check that stuff out. So and you know, I've never been there, so I'll have to watch this and see if I want to go down.
Yes, I know you will.
Definitely. Well, let's take a look over at the Coast Guard Heritage Museum in Barnstable Village for today's Barnstable This Morning Arts and Culture segment.
Hi, I'm Melissa Chartre, and I'm here in Barnstable Village at the Coast Guard Heritage Museum, and joining me is Jack McGrath, who is president of the board for the museum, and I'm so pleased to be here today.
Well, good morning, Melissa. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. So there's so much to talk about because there's not only the museum itself and the history of that building, but there's some interesting things on the property that we'll get to as well.
Absolutely.
But let's begin right where we're at in the museum. What is this beautiful building?
The building was built in 1856 as a U.S. custom house. Barnstable Harbor at that time was the busiest commercial port on Cape Cod, so the customs inspector could view the harbor from his office, the collector of customs. So it was also a post office. It was a prefabricated building. If you look around, the doors are heavy steel, there's cast iron around the windows, and the stairway, as you go upstairs later on, you'll notice is all cast iron. So the building arrived on railroad cars and was assembled here.
One of the original, I didn't know they did the prefab like that way back when.
Mm-hmm. So right now, the town of Barnstable is in the middle of a multi-year process to rehabilitate the building with the cooperation of the Massachusetts Historical Commission and the Community Preservation Board in the town. Because this is a building that's on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's a valuable asset to the town, as well as being a great place for us to have a museum.
Sure, absolutely, which began in 2005.
That's correct.
And how did that happen?
Well, I wasn't here then. I came in 2007, but basically some old Coast Guard people, including a couple of folks from the East Wind, which was an icebreaker, decided there ought to be a Coast Guard museum. And so this building was vacant, and they went to the town and made arrangements to get the building and had the inside painted, did some other work to it, and started collecting things. At the beginning, they would look at each other and say, how are we ever going to fill this place? What's happened now is we're at the stage of where can we put things? Because things just come in the door.
Sure.
People have things at home. We just had some interesting uniform items from the 1930s arrive yesterday. So,
and are these people, it's just a question, bringing them from, that happen to visit and know this museum is here? So it's not just Cape folk that are dropping items
off? Oh no, we
off.
get things. I'm waiting for a package now from a guy from Canada whose father was in the Coast Guard during the Second World War. And we have displays of things that have people that have shipped us things from all over the country.
Sure, and you have 2 floors.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the display itself.
Okay. Well, one of the featured displays this year is the War of 1812. The Revenue Cutter Service was the forerunner of the Coast Guard, which was established in 1790 by Alexander Hamilton. So when the War of 1812 came along, the Revenue Cutter Service played a large role in the War of 1812. So we're featuring some of the stories and artifacts from that period and exhibits, some of which are on loan from the Coast Guard for this exhibit. Also on the first floor here we have more of an exhibit on cutters that show the evolution of the Coast Guard. The name Coast Guard came into use in 1915 when they merged the Revenue Cutter Service and the U.S. Life Saving Service, which was big here on the Cape.
Sure.
The section where we're standing right now features things from the U.S. Life Saving Service. The most famous and greatest rescue, small boat rescue in the history of the Coast Guard took place on Cape Cod in 1952. It was the wreck of the Fort Mercer and the Pendleton, and right where we're standing directly behind you is a model of the 36-500, which was the lifeboat that was used for the rescue. The actual boat belongs to the Orleans Historical Society, and it's down in Rock Harbor.
Okay.
Also here, behind us, across the room from us, is a breeches buoy cart. They used to be able to fire a cannon to shoot a line out to ships that were up on rocks or on sandbars and retrieve the people from that.
Remarkable.
Upstairs is a whole room dedicated to light ships and lighthouses, both which were very big on the Cape. There were many lightships around the Cape. Also upstairs there is a section on Coast Guard stations on the Cape and Coast Guard patrol boats and small boats. There's a large section on the Coast Guard in World War II. A man named Lyndon Spencer was from Falmouth, and he was the captain of the USS Bayfield, which was the flagship of the Utah Beach invasion fleet during D-Day. He went on to become a 3-star admiral in the Coast Guard, and his family donated a large collection of his material to our museum. We also have an exhibit on Coast Guard in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and even Afghanistan. There's also a section on women in the Coast Guard and a section on Coast Guard aviation. That's my section, favorite section, because that's where I spent my time in the Coast Guard.
It's remarkable, and I think that it's such a hidden gem here, although, and that's what we're trying to do, is get the word out to come and visit. Well, you need that, because it's just, you just rattled off what so much is here that so many don't know about, and you're so knowledgeable on the history. You're Costa yourself, as are, it's all volunteers that are here, ready, willing, and able to share the history.
People come in, and some people just want to wander, and some would like a tour. And we always have people here who can give a knowledgeable and comprehensive tour. Or there's the label, you can just wander around and see what you see. Many of our visitors have a Coast Guard connection, but many don't.
Right.
It's the history of America, not just the history of the Coast Guard.
Absolutely. And as you say, not only wander around in this building, but on the property there are 2 interesting buildings in the back. Tell us about those.
Well, what was the old carriage house for the Custom House is the village blacksmith shop.
And I did not know this. I'm embarrassed to say I did not know this.
Jim Ellis, who is a 3rd-generation Barnstable blacksmith, is the blacksmith in residence. And most days that we're open, he is in there running his forge and making things. And people are welcome to stop in and see what he's doing. And if you have a small child, the chances are he might have a surprise for them.
There you go.
And also on the property is the oldest wooden jail in America, which was built in 1690. It was originally on, of all places, Old Jail Lane in Barnstable, and it was moved here in the 70s. And that's open on several days a week, not every day. And that's operated in conjunction with the Cape and Islands Paranormal Research Society, the folks that do the ghost tours here in Barnstable. And they staff the jail for us and have guides to make it a very interesting visit.
It'd be neat if they had some ghosts when you start that ghost tour and do some tricky things as you begin there.
They try.
Well, let's tell our viewers where they can get more information and what your summer hours, your hours are.
Our hours are from May 1st to November 1st.
Okay.
And we're open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'd like to be open more, but that's about the limit of our volunteer staff at this point. We can always schedule groups. We have an admission charge of $5, but if you're sharp-eyed and check some of the many guidebooks available in the Cape, you might find a coupon for $1 off per person. Hint, hint. Hint, hint. And children under 10, of course, are free, and as our active duty Coast Guard. And we'll give you the tour of the building, and you're welcome to visit the other buildings on the ground.
Sure. I know you have a lot of information. I want to tell our viewers, be sure to come to the Coast Guard Heritage Museum right here in Barnstable Village. For Jack McGrath, I'm Melissa Chartrand, wishing you an artful day.